Who wants to start?
Seems like a little testy start to the fall political season. So what would you say happened there this week?
I think what's important for my colleagues on City Council to remember is that citizens expect better. They expect folks who are prepared, who know what they're doing, who have done their homework, who are not grandstanding, and who are focused on what's right for the city, not on what may or may not be right for their political career.
But sir, grandstanding is part of the council chamber experience, isn't it?
I don't actually think so. When you watch question period in the House of Commons or in the legislature, it's ridiculous. Nothing actually gets accomplished there. And City Council, in my first 2 terms, has been remarkably free of that. Sure, there are people who have pet projects, there are things they want to work on, but typically what we've seen is members of council who actually want to get stuff done. And so they're actually concerned about the results of the notices they bring forward rather than the heat that their notices may or may not generate.
What did you think of Councillor Gondek's contention that you treat the behavior of different councillors differently?
I actually did not hear that contention at all, but what I did hear was a member of council who has written a 9-paragraph Facebook post directly insulting one member of council, me, saying, "Why can't you be more civil?" So, goose gander. All right, anything else on real topics?
When does this all?
Yes.
Switching to pools here, what will happen to the land if Inglewood pool shuts down?
Oh, now that's a really good question. So, the report that is going to committee this week suggests giving administration a bit more time to have a bit more conversations. And, I saw some of the media around it today said, well, that might mean these pools will stay open. It might. But what it also might mean is that we'll have a more thoughtful strategy for rec facilities for people who live in the inner city. So, for example, we have the Gray family, Wyatt Eau Claire, we have Repsol Center, we have these major recreation facilities, and I don't think we've been coordinating very well on making sure that different user groups have access to these facilities in the downtown core and the inner cities. So that is a conversation that we have to have. So then, I'm not fluffing your question, I just wanted to give some context. So then, to your specific question about the Inglewood pool, it's really interesting that there's this restrictive covenant there. So there is a whole bunch of legal rigmarole around, well, does that restrictive covenant apply to the current owner? How does that all play through? Do they even want the land? Can the land be used for anything else? It's actually quite an awkward piece of land. And so there are some questions around what would happen, but those are questions for quite a ways in the future. I'd rather focus on making sure that citizens have the rec facilities they need now.
When did you know about the covenant? When did you learn about that?
When did I learn about it? I can't tell you when the city learned about it. I certainly learned about it in the last couple of weeks as we have been thinking about what the right move going forward is. I imagine the city always knew about it. There were people in recreation did, but given that I was away in August, this is when I found out.
So this is obviously the first meeting after the break and the first council meeting anyway. So there are a lot of big things that are going to be happening. This
Preview
autumn.
of the autumn.
How difficult is the budget situation going to be this year? And how big of a task is that going to be?
A lot of that, again, depends on the conduct of members of council. So council has asked for 3 scenarios to come forward to us this fall. One is the status quo, one is a 1.5% tax increase, and one is a tax freeze. I think that it is certainly within the realm of possibility that council will have a rational debate about those 3 scenarios and pick one. Certainly I hope that is what happens. What I think we have run into in the past is a very reactionary sense that council has had. Make a decision, but then don't stick to it. Get moved by the last person you talk to, rather than thinking about the big picture. And I would really encourage my colleagues to look at the big picture, to be forward-thinking, and to ensure that we are being very, very thoughtful in building up the city. Because let's be frank here. We live in an amazing place. We have the lowest taxes in the country. We have the lowest cost of doing business of a major urban center in North America. We tend to forget these things. And one of the things I suggested up front at council today is we should always be improving things. That's why we got elected. But I think the behavior of the council as a whole, me included, over the last several months, has sort of forgotten that we're building on something incredibly good already. Most cities would kill to have our problems. And so let's work hard to make sure we're trying to make this great city even better.
How much uncertainty is there, though, with a provincial budget still in play?
Well, there's a lot of capital uncertainty. Certainly, the government of Alberta in the election promised that they would maintain the capital plan for that the previous government put forward. The Blue Ribbon panel casts some doubt on that, but it also uses outdated numbers. It uses 2017 numbers when, in fact, the previous government's plan already cut by more than half the city's capital budget in 2019. We don't get back to 2017 until 2032. So we've taken our cut. And as long as the provincial government doesn't go much further on that, then there shouldn't be too much drama on the capital budget side. On the operating budget side, I think even senior government ministers were surprised to learn that actually there's not a lot of operating support from the provincial government in our budget. It's important. The low-income transit pass is critical. The funding we get for the police is about 10% of our police budget. So those things we need. You know, if they cut the police funding, well, we can't cut the police budget 10% like that. So we would have to be able to figure out how to make that up. But by and large, from our operating budget perspective, there shouldn't be too much change. And I will be advocating hard for that low-income transit pass, as well as for police funding, and for an understanding that on the capital budget side, we've already taken the cut, and that's reflected in our budget.
Could you talk briefly about the pulmonary fibrosis support you guys did right after?
That was fun, no? So, one of the great things that I find in my job is that I get to work with people in the community who are passionate about making the community better. So yesterday, I spent some time helping raise funds for Parkinson's research, and I also, as I always do, went to the closing ceremonies of the Kidney March. The 10th year of the Kidney March, 450 people walking 100 kilometers to support patients and encourage the fight against kidney disease. And this morning for pulmonary fibrosis, that's a condition that I actually didn't know a lot about until I started this job. But it's one that affects a lot of people in this city and is in fact incurable. And so I think that was a great opportunity for us to have a little bit of fun blowing some bubbles, but reminding us that there are people whose lung capacity is so weak they can't do something as simple as blow a bubble. And raising awareness and funds for that is an important thing for us to do as a community.
Was it a little cathartic to stand next to your colleagues and maybe blow off a little steam, so to say?
We always have lunch together after every meeting, which I think is important because we have to be able to really set aside what we're debating versus how we feel about one another as colleagues.